Have you ever been in the middle of a conversation, looking directly at someone, nodding at all the right moments, maybe even smiling? But inside, your mind checked out minutes ago. You weren't trying to be rude. You weren't distracted by your phone. You just stopped caring. Then the guilt hits. What's wrong with me? Am I becoming arrogant? Why can't I enjoy normal conversations like everyone else? Most people assume this means you're antisocial. Or worse, that you think you're smarter than everyone around you. But psychology tells a very different story. What if losing interest so quickly isn't a personality flaw at all? What if it's simply the way certain minds are wired? Researchers who study intelligence have noticed something fascinating. People with highly analytical minds often become mentally exhausted during conversations that other people find completely normal. Not because they dislike people, but because their brains are searching for something most conversations never provide. And once you understand what's really happening inside your mind, you'll stop blaming yourself for something that may not even be your fault. Because by the end of this video, you'll recognize 7 hidden psychological patterns that explain why some people lose interest in conversations so fast. And the final one might completely change the way you see yourself. Your brain doesn't crave conversation. It craves meaning. Think about the last time someone asked, "How was your weekend?" You answered. They answered. Then someone mentioned the weather. Someone else talked about traffic. Everybody seemed perfectly happy. But inside, you felt absolutely nothing. It wasn't uncomfortable. It wasn't offensive. It was just empty. This is one of the biggest differences psychologists notice in highly intelligent people. Most conversations are built around exchanging information. But intelligent minds aren't looking for information. They're looking for meaning. They naturally ask questions like, why did that happen? What does that reveal about people? What's the bigger picture? Their minds constantly search beneath the surface. That's why small talk can feel surprisingly exhausting. Imagine owning a Formula One race car, but spending the entire day driving in a crowded parking lot. The car isn't broken. It's simply built for something much faster. It's capable of exploring ideas, connecting patterns, solving problems. Yet it's forced to stay inside conversations that never go beyond the surface. And strangely, that requires more energy than people realize. Because pretending to stay mentally engaged in something your brain has already classified as unimportant is exhausting. That's why after an hour of casual conversation, some people feel more tired than they do after solving a difficult problem. Not because talking is hard, but because suppressing the need for something deeper quietly drains them. And what makes this even more frustrating is that sometimes their brain has already finished the conversation, long before everyone else has. Your brain finishes the conversation before everyone else. Here's something most people never notice. Have you ever been listening to someone tell a story, and within the first 30 seconds, you already knew exactly how it was going to end? You could predict the punchline, the lesson, even the next sentence they were about to say. So while everyone else is still following the story, your brain is already waiting for it to finish. This isn't impatience. It's called rapid pattern recognition. Highly intelligent minds are incredibly good at spotting patterns. They don't just hear words. They instantly connect them to past experiences, memories, and thousands of similar situations they've already seen. Their brain quietly builds a prediction before the speaker even reaches the point. And most of the time, that prediction is surprisingly accurate. Think of it like watching a movie for the second time. The scenes are still playing, but your brain already knows what's coming next. The surprise is gone. The excitement disappears. You're simply waiting for the ending to catch up with what you already know. That's exactly how many conversations feel. The strange part is, from the outside, nobody notices. You're still nodding. You're still saying things like, yeah, I get it. That makes sense. But mentally, you're somewhere else. Because for your brain, the conversation already ended 5 minutes ago. And that's where the guilt begins. You start wondering, why can't I just stay present? Why am I losing focus again? But the truth is, your attention didn't disappear because you don't respect the person. It disappeared because your brain stopped receiving anything new. Once it predicts the destination, it naturally loses interest in the journey. They've already imagined 5 different ways the conversation could go, and they're trying to choose the best one. It also explains why they become incredibly engaged whenever someone says something unexpected. One surprising idea, one opinion they've never heard before. one completely different perspective. And suddenly, they're fully present again, because their brain finally has something it can't predict. But this creates another problem that almost nobody talks about. The more predictable people become, the harder they are to listen to. And that's exactly why the next behavior feels so mentally exhausting. Because intelligent minds don't just notice repetition, they become overwhelmed by it. Repetition feels like mental static. Now let me ask you something. Do you know someone who tells the same story every single time you meet? The same vacation, the same joke, the same opinion. At first, it's interesting. The second time, still okay. But by the 5th or 10th time, something inside you just switches off. You already know every word before they say it. Most people think this is impatience. It isn't. It's actually how an intelligent brain protects its energy. Your brain is constantly searching for novelty. The moment it realizes there's nothing new to learn, it quietly shifts its attention somewhere else. Think about the sound of an air conditioner. When you first enter a room, you notice it immediately. 5 minutes later, it's still making the exact same noise. But your brain completely filters it out. Not because it stopped existing, but because it stopped being useful. Conversations work the same way. The more predictable they become, the more your brain treats them like background noise. And here's the part most people never realize. Pretending to stay interested is actually exhausting. You're still smiling, still reacting, still saying, "Really? That's crazy. No way." But inside, your brain has been somewhere else for the last 10 minutes. You're putting energy into looking engaged, instead of actually feeling engaged. And that mental acting drains you far more than people realize. That's why after a party, some people feel completely exhausted, even though they barely talked. It wasn't the talking that tired them. It was pretending to stay mentally present in conversations their brain had already filtered out. But here's where everything changes. Most people think intelligent people enter conversations looking for friendship, or validation, or entertainment. In reality, many of them are searching for something completely different. They're hunting for one single idea, one thought they've never heard before, one perspective that challenges everything they thought they knew. A single new idea is worth more than an hour of predictable conversation. And that's exactly what we'll uncover next. They aren't looking for entertainment. They're looking for ideas. Here's something that surprises a lot of people. Most conversations begin with one simple goal: to connect. People want to feel accepted. They want to fit in. They want someone to agree with them. But highly intelligent minds often walk into conversations looking for something completely different. They're searching for a new idea, something they've never considered before, a different perspective, a question that makes them stop and think. Because for a curious mind, ideas are exciting. Psychologists call this a high need for cognition. In simple words, some people genuinely enjoy thinking, not because they have to, but because their brain actually rewards them for it. For most people, a great meal, a funny joke, or getting a compliment feels rewarding. For highly analytical people, learning something completely new creates that same feeling. That's why one unexpected sentence can instantly pull them back into a conversation. Imagine sitting through 20 minutes of ordinary small talk. Then someone suddenly asks, "What if memories aren't stored the way we think they are?" Or, "If humans discovered another intelligent civilization tomorrow, how would religion change?" Suddenly, your brain wakes up. Your eyes light up. You lean forward without even realizing it. Because now, there's something worth exploring. This is why highly intelligent people sometimes become obsessed with one person in a room. Not because that person is the funniest or the loudest, but because they introduced one idea nobody else was talking about. One original thought. That's also why these people often ask unusual questions. Not to sound smart, but because they're genuinely curious. They don't just ask, "What do you do for work?" They ask, "What's something you've changed your mind about recently?" Or, "What's one belief you think most people get completely wrong?" Questions like these open doors. Small talk closes them. But this constant search for deeper thinking creates another hidden problem. Because when your brain naturally analyzes everything, you start noticing things that almost nobody else notices. Tiny contradictions, hidden patterns, little details that everyone else completely misses. And once you see, you can't unsee them. That becomes the next reason ordinary conversations start feeling mentally exhausting. They notice what everyone else misses. Have you ever been in a group conversation when someone says something and within seconds, you realize it doesn't make sense? Maybe they claim one thing, then 5 minutes later, they completely contradict themselves. Everyone else keeps talking. Nobody reacts, but your brain catches it immediately. And suddenly, you can't stop thinking about it. This isn't overthinking. It's another pattern often found in highly analytical minds. Their brain is constantly comparing information. It checks whether words match actions, whether today's opinion matches yesterday's, whether the story actually fits together. It happens automatically, almost like having a spell checker running in the background. Most people simply hear the conversation, but analytical minds quietly analyze it. They notice exaggerations, half-truths, logical gaps, even tiny inconsistencies in someone's body language. And once they notice them, ignoring them becomes surprisingly difficult. But here's where it gets exhausting. Every time they catch one of these contradictions, they face the same silent decision. Do I point it out? Or do I keep quiet? If they speak up, they risk sounding argumentative, negative, or like they always have to be right. If they stay silent, their brain keeps replaying it anyway. Neither option feels satisfying. So most of the time, they choose silence. Not because they didn't know, because they know explaining every contradiction isn't worth the conflict. From the outside, it looks like they've become quiet, disconnected, maybe even bored. But inside, their mind is still working, still connecting dots, still processing everything happening around them. This is one reason highly intelligent people often speak less than others. Not because they have nothing to say, but because they've already thought through 10 different responses and decided none of them are worth saying out loud. Which leads to one of the biggest misconceptions about intelligent people. People assume quiet means they're shy, they're socially awkward, or they don't know what to say. In reality, the opposite is often true. Sometimes, they're simply thinking far more than they're speaking, and understanding that difference changes everything. They'd rather think than keep talking. Here's something most people get completely wrong. When someone is quiet, people immediately assume one of three things. They're shy, they're nervous, or they don't know what to say. But what if none of those are true? What if silence isn't a weakness, but a choice? Highly intelligent people often experience conversations very differently. While everyone else is focused on what to say next, their mind is already exploring 5 different possibilities. They're examining your words, looking for hidden meaning, connecting your ideas to things they've read, experienced, or questioned years ago. The conversation isn't just happening outside. It's happening inside their mind too. That's why they pause before answering. Not because they're uncomfortable, because they're processing. Think of it like this. Most people answer the first thought that comes into their head. An analytical mind usually filters through several thoughts before choosing one. Is this accurate? Does this actually add value? Could this be misunderstood? Is there a better way to explain it? By the time they've finished thinking, the conversation has often moved on. So instead of interrupting, they simply stay quiet. Ironically, the person with the most to say often says the least. And here's another interesting pattern. Many intelligent people don't enjoy talking just to fill silence. To them, silence isn't awkward. It's peaceful. While others rush to keep the conversation alive, they feel perfectly comfortable sitting in complete quiet because their mind is never actually silent. It's constantly imagining, questioning, creating, analyzing. In fact, some of their best ideas don't come while talking. They come afterward, during a walk, a late-night drive, or while lying awake with nothing but their thoughts. That's why forcing constant conversation can actually feel draining. Not because they dislike people, but because reflection gives them energy in a way conversation sometimes can't. But here's something even more surprising. Despite enjoying silence, there is one thing that can instantly pull them back into a conversation. It isn't humor. It isn't charisma. It isn't even intelligence. It's something far more powerful. Authenticity. The moment someone stops performing, stops pretending, and starts speaking honestly, everything changes. The quiet observer suddenly becomes fully engaged. And that's exactly what we'll explore next. The one thing that instantly gets their attention. Have you ever noticed? Some conversations feel exciting for the first few minutes. Then suddenly, they feel completely empty. Not because the topic changed, but because something about it stopped feeling real. This is something highly intelligent people notice almost instantly. They're not just listening to what you're saying. They're paying attention to why you're saying it. Is it genuine? Or are you simply saying what people expect to hear? That's a difference most people never think about. But analytical minds do. Imagine someone telling an incredible story. Everyone is laughing. Everyone seems impressed. But something feels off. The details are exaggerated. The emotions seem rehearsed. Every sentence feels designed to gain attention instead of expressing the truth. Most people won't question it. But an intelligent mind quietly disconnects. Not because the story isn't entertaining. Because it doesn't feel authentic. They aren't searching for perfect conversations. They're searching for honest ones. And that's why something unexpected happens. A person can spend 20 minutes telling exciting stories. Then someone else quietly says, "Honestly, I've been struggling lately." Or, "I don't really know what I'm doing with my life." Suddenly, everything changes. The room hasn't become louder. It has become real. And that's exactly what captures their attention. Because honesty creates something entertainment never can. Connection, real emotions, real uncertainty, real curiosity, where nobody is trying to look smarter, cooler, or more successful than they actually are. Because that's where meaningful conversations begin. Think about the people you've never forgotten. Chances are, it wasn't because they had the funniest jokes or the most impressive stories. It was because they said something genuine, something vulnerable, something that made you think. I felt that too. Those are the conversations analytical minds remember for years. Depth. But here's the unfortunate part. This search for meaningful conversations often comes with a hidden cost. The very thing that makes intelligent people crave deeper connections can also make them feel incredibly alone. And that's the side of intelligence almost nobody talks about. The hidden cost of thinking differently. Here's the part people rarely talk about. Everyone assumes intelligent people enjoy being alone, that they don't need anyone, that they're perfectly happy staying in their own world. But that's usually not true. What many of them actually want is something incredibly rare. A conversation that feels effortless. A connection that doesn't stay on the surface. Someone who asks questions instead of repeating opinions. Someone who's curious instead of simply waiting for their turn to speak. The problem is, those conversations don't happen very often. So over time, something begins to change. They stop expecting depth. They stop expecting honesty. And eventually, they stop expecting to be understood. From the outside, maybe even cold. But inside, it's something completely different. It's disappointment. Imagine walking into a library every single day, hoping to discover a new book, only to find the same book waiting on every shelf. At first, you keep looking. Then you stop searching altogether. That's what repeated shallow conversations can feel like. Not because other people aren't interesting, but because the connection never reaches the level they're hoping for. And here's the sad part. The more they pull back, the more people misunderstand them. Some assume they're arrogant. Others think they're antisocial. Some even believe they simply don't care. But none of those explanations are usually true. They're not avoiding people. They're avoiding conversations that leave them feeling emptier than when they started. Ironically, many of the people who appear the most independent actually crave the deepest relationships. Not dozens of friendships. Just one conversation where they don't have to simplify their thoughts. Where they don't have to pretend. Where someone finally understands what they're trying to say. Because real connection isn't about talking for hours. It's about feeling seen. Feeling understood. Feeling like someone finally speaks your language. And when that happens, something incredible changes. The person who barely spoke all evening suddenly becomes impossible to stop. Hours pass like minutes. Questions lead to even bigger questions. Neither person wants the conversation to end. Because that's what they've been searching for all along. Not attention. Not validation. Just someone willing to go beneath the surface. And that's when you realize something important. Maybe intelligent people don't lose interest in people at all. Maybe they're simply waiting for a conversation that's worth staying in. But that leads us to one final truth. The biggest misunderstanding about intelligence. And it's probably not what you think. The final truth. So, after everything we've talked about, what does all of this really mean? Does losing interest in conversations automatically make someone intelligent? No, not at all. Plenty of people get bored for reasons that have nothing to do with intelligence. Sometimes they're simply distracted. Sometimes they're tired. Sometimes they're emotionally overwhelmed. The point isn't that every intelligent person behaves this way, or that everyone who behaves this way is highly intelligent. The real takeaway is much simpler. Some minds are naturally driven by curiosity. They don't just want to exchange words. They want to exchange ideas. They don't just want answers. They want questions that open new doors. And when those conversations don't happen, their attention quietly drifts somewhere else. Not because they think they're better than anyone, but because their brain is searching for something deeper. Here's something worth remembering. The quality of your conversations often shapes the quality of your thinking. If every conversation stays on the surface, your mind rarely gets challenged. But one meaningful discussion, one unexpected perspective, one question you've never considered before, can completely change the way you see the world. That's why the people who leave the biggest impact on our lives usually aren't the loudest. They're the ones who make us think, the ones who challenge our assumptions, the ones who leave us with a question that stays in our mind long after the conversation ends. So if you've ever wondered, why do I lose interest so quickly? Maybe the better question is, what kind of conversations bring me back to life? Because once you know the answer, you stop forcing yourself to fit into conversations that drain you, and you start seeking the ones that inspire you. Not every room is meant for you. Not every conversation deserves your energy, and that's okay. The goal isn't to talk more. The goal is to connect more deeply, to stay curious, to keep learning, and to never lose the desire to explore ideas that challenge the way you think. Because in the end, a truly curious mind isn't defined by how much it knows. It's defined by how willing it is to keep discovering what it doesn't. If this video made you see yourself, or someone you know, in a different way, let me know in the comments. Which of these patterns felt the most familiar to you? I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you enjoy psychology, human behavior, and the hidden patterns behind the way we think, make sure to subscribe. Because sometimes, the most important discoveries don't happen in the world around us. They happen inside our own minds. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.